Hello and welcome to iNN's headlines and beyond for April 11th, 2012. As always, coming to you raw and unedited. This broadcast is going to be a shortened broadcast, as long as this week is going to be abbreviated as well, because we won't be back until Monday due to the Greek Easter holiday coming up. Uh, to all my Greek and anyone who is Eastern Christian, uh, Kalopaska, Kalianastasi. That means uh, happy Pascha, happy Pascha, happy resurrection, Anastasi. So that's what's going to be happening over the weekend. But we are coming back on Monday with a retooled show, some new features in it. We previewed the feature last night. We're going to be looking into conspiracy theories because conspiracy theories really do play an important part on how we see and perceive the news. A lot of it's brought out about this bias, but a lot of these bias, as I said, is in every aspect of media, including the news and journalism. So when you hear people talk about unbiased journalism, they're not really telling you the whole truth. Uh, and today, this was actually confirmed. I've got in our next clip segment here. I've got to show you this. This is the first clip of today. Let me get this playing here.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Bill O'Reilly in the Weekdays at Bernie segment tonight. Let's go right to the purveyor, BernardGoldberg.com, who joins us now from Miami. So do you agree with me that Mike Wallace is the best TV interviewer ever?
Are we including Jesse Waters in that question?
You know, you bully Jesse. He's only 17 years old. All right, Goldberg, come on.
I know.
He's doing pretty well.
Yes, I do. I do agree with you. And it's not only about the journalism, even though Mike was a very, very good journalist, and even though that's a very big part of it, Mike understood the medium in which he worked. You're not supposed to say this out loud if you're in television, but Mike understood that there was a lot of show business in television news, and he was a great performer. He was able to move seamlessly from putting on a velvet glove to putting on brass knuckles. Best example of that, he's interviewing the Ayatollah Khomeini, and he says, "Your Holiness, this isn't me. I'm not saying this. Please understand. I'm not saying this." That's the velvet glove. And then, wham, he says, "But President Sadat says you're a lunatic." Now that's great journalism, great television, and it's memorable. And as far as the piece he did with you, if you had to take a wild guess in advance that a mainstream news organization is going to do a piece about Bill Riley of Fox News, you figure they might hammer you. They might go after you. Mike was just fair. He was fair, and I thought the piece he did with you was fair, and I think you did too.
Yeah, I did. I mean, Don Hewitt and Mike Wallace and Peter Jennings early on, all three of them, figured out what we're doing here. All right, they figured out that we're taking a Sunday morning concept, bringing it to prime time, a lot of opinion, a lot of confrontation, a lot of showbiz, no doubt the factor, a lot of showbiz, okay? We're doing it for a good purpose, though. We're doing it to bring honest information. There's no subterfuge. You either agree with me or you don't. We lay it right out there. And those three guys, they respected that. And that's why I got a fair cut on 60 Minutes. They didn't bring in the ideological hammer. But to be truthful,
Right.
Mike Wallace was a liberal man. But I never saw that in his
Right,
presentation.
exactly.
Did you?
No, that's a very good point. I don't think Mike ever understood the concept of liberal bias in the news, because he would say, "What are you talking about? Ronald Reagan was elected twice, George Bush was elected, the other Republicans were elected," but that wasn't the essence of liberal bias, because the American people aren't zombies that automatically follow what the liberal media says. But he was absolutely fair, and even if he didn't get the concept of liberal bias, it didn't matter, because it didn't apply to him. Can I just tell you a quick story? He paid me a very high compliment once. I could do this very quickly. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
I was at CBS one day and somebody uttered the 5 words you never want to hear. You never want to hear this, especially if you're a CEO of a big American company. You don't want to hear it. Mike Wallace on line 1. You don't want to hear those words. So I'm going, oh, what the heck is this about? So I pick up the phone. I say, hey, Mike, what's up? And you could bleep this if you want. He says, he doesn't say hello. He doesn't say how are you. He says, you son of a bitch. So I start laughing. I said, because? And he says, you did a story last night that was really, really good. And I wanted to do it, and you beat me to it. That's one of the highest compliments I've ever been paid. And Mike...
And he didn't have to do that, obviously. All right, now,
no,
real quick,
he didn't. It was very nice of him.
I want to run in a Barbara Walters soundbite from The View. Go.
There are journalists where the whole thing is how opinionated can you be.
Right, that's...
But I know...
There are others.
Well, I will give my opinion here of,
occasionally.
But most of us do not. You don't know whether we're Republicans or Democrats or exhibitionists or whatever.
You're rare.
I know you're Republican. Depressives. We don't know if you're depressive.
We are.
All right, so Barbara thinks that most people don't know.
Okay, Bill, I know you like Barbara, so I'll be kind. This woman is clueless.
That's
clueless.
fine.
I know, that was my kind. You're right. Look, first I'll give you just 2 very quick examples. Back when Clinton was president, a very reputable organization did a poll of Washington journalists. 89% voted for Bill Clinton. 89%. 7% voted for George Bush. Now, in a democracy, nobody gets 89% of the vote. That 89% is what Fidel Castro and Saddam Hussein used to get. But Washington journalists, 89% of them voted for Bill Clinton. Okay, that's one thing. Fast forward to the last election. In my book, A Slobbering Love Affair, even liberal journalists acknowledged the obvious that the media was rooting for Barack Obama. So, Barbara, we do know if reporters are Republicans or Democrats. They're overwhelmingly Democrats. They're overwhelmingly liberal. And you don't have to take my word. They tell you that every time they go on the air.
Bernie Goldberg, everybody. Dennis?
Okay, there you go. We have our little piece on media bias there, and as you see, it's not simply issues surrounding Israel or anything like that. The bias, basically, in television and reporting now is on all sides, and as they said and acknowledged that they are in a business of show business, and they're bringing a lot of this information within the show, and so there is this is what I was talking about before about the new style of news known as infotainment, as entertainment with information inside of it. And because of the need to dramatize and pump things up and hype things and so on and so forth in order to bring in the ratings, this affects the message that gets out there, and it also affects how people see what's going on in the world. And this is how various different political organizations then can get in there and start manipulating people and the general public at large by manipulating what's seen in the news. And it doesn't always have to be what's actually said, but what is omitted from a broadcast. So this brings us into our next segment here. When we go back now, we'll start looking into the goings on with the 2012 election, and it's already starting to heat up, and we've already got as I said, a couple issues to look at here, and this is going to bring us to our next section of videos. There are 3 or 4 different videos in this next section here that will kind of sort of set the stage as to where we're going with this next election.
Can matter a whole lot. Chairman, I want to get you on the record about something, because leadership is all about casting vision, and you created quite a visual with your war on caterpillars comment when responding to what's been called the war on women. You called the war on women a fiction. Obviously, the war on caterpillars comment created lots of headlines. Is that something you want to walk back or clarify right now? I'm not going to walk back. I'll double down on it. It was this war on women is a fiction that the Democrats have created, and the real war on women is the war that this president has put forward on the American people by not following through on his promises, by having women disproportionately affected by the Obama economy. Go read Anita Dunn's book. If you want to go read about a war on women in the workplace, go read that book, and you'll see what the White House's record is on
Chairman,
women.
how can you say that it's a fiction, though, if you stand on the record of what the Republican Party has said and done? And let's just remind you, all three remaining Republican presidential candidates, they are pledging to eliminate federal funding for family planning. All three of them say they support so-called personhood measures. According to the Guttmacher Institute, 90 anti-abortion bills have been signed into law in 2011. This after many of the state legislatures and state governorships swung back to the Republican side. So how do you say that it's a fiction when these laws exist on the book now, on the books?
Because it is a fiction, Thomas. It's a fiction. It's a fiction because number one, there is no war on women. It's a fiction. If you believe that all women are pro-abortion, then maybe in your own world, there's a war on women. But the fact of the matter is that our party believes in life for everybody, and the fact of the matter is that the real war on women, the actual things that I think most women in this country are most concerned about, which is a good job, a good family, being able to live the American dream, provide for your kids and your family, that war on women is being perpetrated by President Barack Obama, who has not delivered on his promises, who has put our economy on the wrong track, and we're going to have an opportunity to correct all of that in November.
But Reince, the fiction that you talk about, the phrase war on women, it's now being uttered by Republicans like Mitt Romney. Take a listen to this.
The other day there's been some talk about a war on women. The real war on women has been waged by the Obama administration's failure on the economy.
All right, so it sounds like you've got the messaging going there from Romney, because it's the exact same
we're just
phrasing
borrowing.
that you just gave
We're just
me.
borrowing your messaging. We're just borrowing your messaging and pointing out to the American people that this war on women fiction that the Democrats have tried to perpetrate upon us is a war that, if you actually look at what matters most to Americans, which is jobs and the economy, it's a war that this president is losing, because women in this country know that the most important thing in any family is an opportunity for a good job, and this president isn't providing it.
But Reince, you can't discount the fact that we almost took the government to the brink of closing over Planned Parenthood. Correct?
The brink of closing over...
Did we or didn't we?
The world will continue.
The world will continue, exactly. But is this the fact of the Republican Party or not? Because you say it's a fiction, and you don't want to walk back the fact that war on caterpillars, that's fine. But how can you say that it's still a fiction when this truly exists in these laws? 90, spiking in 2011, 90 different anti-abortion laws coming across the state legislatures, spiking in the country after the Republicans take back state legislatures and governorships. How do you say it's a fiction?
You and I are never going to be on the same page as long as you believe that if you're pro-life, you're anti-women. And you and I are never going to be on the same page, because I happen to believe that life begins at conception, and you don't. So since you don't believe that, you're always going to believe that if someone is...
This is not about what I believe or what I don't believe. This is me about asking you about questions about the Republican National Committee and your leadership.
Because I don't buy your argument. I happen to believe that you can be pro-women and pro-life. You don't. That's the problem, Thomas. And I'm going to go back to the most important issue in this country. The most important issue in this country is the economy. It's the issue that you and President Obama don't want to talk about, because it's an issue in regard to the economy that this president has been an absolute failure on. And as long as he's been a failure in the economy, he's going to lose the women vote in November, because he has not fulfilled the promises that he made to the American people. And that, my friend, is the most important issue facing women in this country.
We shall see. Right now, the gender gap is 2-1 with women under 50 in swing states right now, leading toward President Obama. Reince Priebus, chairman of the RNC. Reince, nice to see you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Howard Dean on the attack. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Just call me Miss Cleo, psychic to the stars. Just minutes after I told you last night that the Democratic Party's strategy to re-elect President Obama will be to attack Mitt Romney and the Republican Party. Presto! A few minutes later, Howard Dean shows up on MSNBC and says this.
The Republican Party is gay bashing, Muslim bashing, Latino bashing, immigrant bashing, women bashing every day. And so their young people are just not going to vote for Romney because they're not going to, they think insurance should actually pay for birth control. They don't, their friends are gay, Muslim, Latino, and so forth and so on. They're sick of this stuff.
Now, I want to thank Governor Dean for making me an oracle. It was nice of him to do it. So what we have here is the Democrats trying to put together a coalition of the aggrieved. Millions of Americans who feel they're not getting what they deserve. And of course, President Obama is here to help them. Now, that analysis is not a slap at the president. Unlike some of you, I don't think he's a bad guy. But I do think he's misguided philosophically, and because of that, is doing damage to the country's economic infrastructure. But I don't see him as Dr. Evil. In fact, I have never, ever seen Mr. Obama with a cat.
As you know, every diabolical scheme that I've hatched has been thwarted by Austin Powers.
Now, seriously, here's how the campaign is going to unfold. The coalition of the aggrieved will be stoked up by guys like Howard Dean and a variety of other liberal bomb throwers. They will put forth that America is not a fair country and that the only person who can make it fair is President Obama. The bomb throwers will then slime Mitt Romney in every way possible. Now, on the other side, conservatives and Republicans will make a mistake if they sink into that swamp. At this point, everybody knows President Obama. You don't have to demonize the man. You either like him or you don't. But everybody does not know how much danger there is in uncontrolled federal spending. That is what Mitt Romney and the Republicans have to make crystal clear. How a $16 trillion debt that continues to rise will affect every American. If they can get that point across, everybody will be aggrieved, not just a few selected minorities. So there you have it, right from the mouth of an oracle. And that's the memo. Now to the top. Mark Garagos as a defense.
All right, so that's the take on politics there, where how we sort of see what's going on in the media and how the media portrays everything. And we can actually go back and say that the way this is working out is, and it should work out, in many cases, it's actually better for someone to say something other than myself. Let's say you have an argument. The best way in many cases to present an argument isn't to go up there and say, "Oh well, I need to repeat and say what someone else said," and when you can always have someone else make the argument for you. And what O'Reilly said, and the clip from O'Reilly was an earlier clip. It was before a lot of this stuff happened, and that's what I was showing. But here it is now, Hillary Rosen on AC 360.
The economy, and that's what women overwhelmingly say they really care about right now in poll after poll. And whether it's a typical pattern or not, women are seeing jobs come back much more slowly than men are. Is there anything really wrong then with reaching out to women on an issue that they care about, on the economy?
Well, first, could we just get rid of this word war on women? The Obama campaign does not use it. President Obama does not use it. This is something that the Republicans are accusing people of using, but they're actually the ones spreading it. With respect to economic issues, I think actually that Mitt Romney's right, that ultimately women care more about the economic well-being of their families and the like, but he doesn't connect on that issue either. What you have is Mitt Romney running around the country saying, well, you know, my wife tells me that what women really care about are economic issues, and when I listen to my wife, that's what I'm hearing. Guess what? His wife has actually never worked a day in her life. She's never really dealt with the kinds of economic issues that a majority of the women in this country are facing in terms of how do we feed our kids, how do we send them to school, and how do we worry, and why do we worry about their future? So I think yes, it's about these positions, and yes, I think there will be a war of words about the positions, but there's something much more fundamental about Mitt Romney. He seems so old-fashioned when it comes to women, and I think that comes across, and I think that that's going to hurt him over the long term. He just doesn't really see us as equal.
Eric, wants to be able to respond to that.
Well, I'm still hung up on we Democrats haven't been using the war on women, because I've been playing the clips of Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Nancy Pelosi and others using the
They
phrase
don't say
war
that.
on women. I'm pretty sure.
No.
Yeah, I think it's a Democratic talking point. I think the Democrats have used it. I think their political mouthpieces from MSNBC to Think Progress and elsewhere have used it. It's clear that that's what the Democrats want to talk about is this war on women. I do think that Romney's going to have problems relating to women. He is going to have problems relating to men, but those problems are going to be about him being able to relate to people in general. And frankly, if the economy goes down, I don't really think it's going to matter. More and more we're seeing small businesses saying they don't even want to hire headed into next year, and that's going to be a problem not for Mitt Romney, but for Barack Obama.
Okay, so there's that clip there, and what you see there is that you can see how this denial from the Democratic left. You see the coalition that's now sort of popped up of that O'Reilly had been talking about in his clip, how you're going to have these liberal bomb throwers trying to throw out and create all these diversions and other issues and sort of to pull the argument in a variety of different directions, particularly away from the economy, because the economy is doing so poorly. You also have in the statements there, if you listen to the the socialist side of the equation here, their perspective is if you don't believe in abortion, like particularly women who don't believe in abortion, and housewives, because she's attacking Mitt Romney's wife for being a housewife, and this is a common tactic of the left, that only working women matter, that housewives and people who are religious, particularly women who are religious, don't matter in this conversation, that they don't represent the reality of women today. And they'll often tell you this, so that's sort of one way to sort of skin the cat and say, oh, well, they don't believe the way we believe, they must not be real women. But that's again, not a proper argument. The proper argument is, and even I'm going to say this, the Republican, when he's faced with these questions, is like a deer caught in the headlights. He doesn't know how to respond. And the thing is, the proper response to this whole thing on abortion would be that is not simply a Christian issue. If you go back to the book from Oedipus Rex and the Theban plays by Sophocles, what you'll find is in the very book of Oedipus Rex, they're talking about murdering children up to a certain almost up to 6 years old. The oracle told you to get rid of your child because he's going to be bad luck. Then you got rid of your child, and so along comes Hippocrates in this area who he is with a group of doctors. These are the ancient doctors, and this includes doctors in this sort of mentality and understanding of life. Can even be seen in ancient Egyptian medicine. That they consider the baby within the womb still to be alive. They still consider it to be a complete whole human being, because we've seen in the Egyptian tombs, we've seen mummified fetuses. And this means that they believe that this being had a soul. And so what happens is that Hippocrates comes up and creates the Hippocratic Oath. This is what all medical physicians take. This is standard to medicine, saying that that it's wrong. Not only they're saying that it's wrong to take a human life, but for those who take human life, and this includes babies, that they're cursed. The Hippocratic Oath is a curse on any doctor who dares take a life. And Hippocrates and the Egyptian doctors and ancient weren't Christian. So what happens is you're dealing with a conceptual philosophy brought out by the left that is fundamentally not even 200 years old. It's never been proven. It's simply a floating idea out there. It's filled with mythologies. Again, because once you stop can't prove something the way they intended to prove things are now those gaps and holes are filled in with myths, and all these groups are now guilty of creating these myths. Uh, and instead of being simply a philosophy or a modern idea, it's now religion. So these people on the left are as religious as the people on the right. So while they're talking about religious bigotry, they themselves are religious bigots. They're just simply favoring their own thoughts and ideas, their own religion over somebody else's religion, and that's the only position they have to defend themselves. So we're going to go on now, and I think we're going to segment the stuff out to really sort of organize this better. So this is the end of the first segment, and now we're going to go into the second segment, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to the second segment of iNN's Headlines and Beyond for April 2012. We finished out looking at how the race for 2012, the presidential race for 2012, is shaping up, and what we're going to do next is we're going to take an issue and show how issues that are not don't look initially like to be political issues can morph and become a political issue. And Obama, this is what I said yesterday. I was wondering about the Martin Zimmerman case, whether or not the Martin Zimmerman case would become a political issue in the 2012 election. Well, it actually has come, and I'll show you how this actually fits in. The clips I'm going to play now, I'm going to play two clips. These are clips from basically from yesterday's broadcast. We're going to play that.
Mark Garagos, as a defense attorney, what was your reaction to this very public withdrawal?
Oh my God. I'm sitting here, Anderson, and this is just a train wreck of proportions. I don't even know where to begin.
Explain.
Well, first of all, I don't understand the people invoking their ethical obligations and then going out and blasting the client, which is what they just did. This may be the height of chutzpah for criminal defense lawyers to say, we haven't talked to our clients for 2 days, so therefore we're withdrawing. By the way, there's no court case filed, so there's nothing to withdraw from, number one. Number two, who are you to be diagnosing your client's mental state when you say you haven't talked to him? This is completely inexplicable, and I thought I was watching a Saturday Night Live skit.
Is it unusual to you, Mark, that they were never officially retained by Mr. Zimmerman? I mean, every time I've hired attorneys, I've gotten a document pretty quickly to sign saying, or even a real estate agent, a document pretty quickly to sign saying, I am retaining you.
Well, here in California, you got Jose on the line. You can ask Jose. Here in California, if it's a retention for over $1,000, the state bar rule is it must be in writing, signed by the client. To be out there doing the media tour and bouncing from place to place, and I'm telling you, my tongue is bleeding because I was biting my tongue as I was watching this because I don't like to second guess other lawyers who are in the eye of the storm. But this, frankly, is one of the most outrageous things I've ever witnessed. I mean, this is really beyond the pale for two lawyers to go out there and say we haven't contacted him in 2 days and we felt it was our ethical responsibility to go on the air right now and start blasting him and saying it may be a potential defense that the guy's got a mental problem, and when we're trying to say that he was in reasonable fear for his life when he had shot somebody. This is just the height of absurdity. I don't even know where to begin on this, Anderson. It's ridiculous.
Jose Baez, what do you make of this?
Well, Anderson, first, you can't have Mark on before me because he just stole every single word I was about to say. I think I too thought I was watching a Saturday Night Live skit. I think it's unbelievable that you would get on television and talk about your client's mental state. Now, this is what you have here. You have, as an attorney, you have an ethical obligation not only to not attorney-client communications, but attorney-client confidences. Things you learn in the process of representing a client are considered confidential. So any conversations they had or non-conversations they had with George Zimmerman are completely protected. And the holder of this privilege is George Zimmerman, not the attorney. unfortunately, I've seen in Central Florida this type of resignation from a public resignation from another attorney who I'd rather not name, and I too think it's reprehensible, unbelievable.
Sonny,
Jose, what do they have in the water down there in Florida? I don't understand what they're doing. This is just absolutely the worst thing I think I can remember seeing any lawyers do in regards to their client. I thought that some of the previous interviews were train wrecks. Those things were toy cars compared to what this is.
Well, actually, Jose, let me just ask you about the Florida law. How quickly are you supposed to sign a document retaining counsel?
Now, a retainer agreement is not required. Unlike in other states, it is strongly suggested, and certainly it is something that any competent lawyer would do, would be immediately get a retainer agreement, especially if you're putting your face, your name in front of a television camera, saying that you represent someone that you haven't even met. I think that's incredibly reckless.
Sonny Hostin, you're a former prosecutor. What's your take on it?
Well, Anderson, for once, Mark Garagos and I agree, right? And I agree with Jose Baez as well. I've never seen anything like this. And so, Mark, you have me on this one. But I think as a prosecutor, you come, you're looking at a case, and now I'm worried. I'm worried if I am inclined to bring charges. Is George Zimmerman a flight risk? Can I get to him? If I have to issue an arrest warrant, now maybe my investigation is going a little more quickly. Maybe now I'm going to bring charges a little more quickly. And so this really harms George Zimmerman in the eyes of a prosecutor looking at this case and deciding whether or not to charge.
Mark,
and who are they going to call? They're going to call these two lawyers now as witnesses as to his mental state, and which, as Jose aptly described, is something that's completely protected by the privilege, and they just go out on national TV and say this guy is unhinged?
Let me begin with the family here, who you've been very closely in touch with, obviously. Were they watching today's news conference, news conference given on behalf of George Zimmerman's attorneys? What was their reaction?
Yes, ma'am. As the lead attorney for the parents of Trayvon Martin and with our other lawyers, we all watched the press conference. And as I told Roland earlier, it was just surprising to us. And after the press conference, his parents turned to me and said, they don't know where this guy is at. And that is the issue. They don't know where the killer of Trayvon Martin is at. He is unaccounted for, and they are really concerned about that because they do worry about him being a flight risk. They worry about if he's ever going to be brought to justice for killing their son.
We hear from Sanford Police. They say they do know where George Zimmerman is, even though he's apparently not exactly in contact with anyone else. Do they buy that, and are they still fearful that despite the fact that police know where he is, he could still flee?
Well, with this sporadic conduct on behalf of George Zimmerman, we think he's a flight risk. We found out today he's not in the state of Florida. The lawyers say they don't think he will leave the country, but again, they haven't met him. As we were telling Roland Martin, we're really concerned about this because how does this impact the prosecution going forward? If he is charges of assault, is he going to face the charges, or is he going to flee?
Wait, Mr. Crump,
it's a real troubling matter.
Am I hearing you correctly that you are hearing that he is not in Florida? Is that what you just said?
Yes, we heard that he's not in the state of Florida.
Where are you getting that from?
Well, no, we picked that up from the press conference. They said they know where he's at, but they know where they think he is, but they're not sure.
Okay, so remember these two clips now. This is the important part. Remember these two clips, how, they're talking about George Zimmerman, the lawyers that were properly retained, went out and said all they said about this. Now, take a look, and we're going to play this in the context of what Bill O'Reilly had said about what's going on with the election. And this is the clip that I played before. This clip of Bill O'Reilly is actually from last week. It's about a week old now.
Trayvon Martin's parents have campaigned long and hard for their son.
Today we filed an information charging George Zimmerman with murder in the second degree. A capias has been issued for his arrest.
When Florida's special prosecutor announced that George Zimmerman had been arrested and charged, their sense of relief was obvious. Trayvon Martin's mother had heartfelt words for those that have stood beside her family.
We simply wanted an arrest. We wanted nothing more, nothing less. We just wanted an arrest, and we got it. And I say thank you. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Secondly, I just want to speak from my heart to your heart, because a heart has no color. It's not black, it's not white, it's red. And I want to say thank you from my heart to your heart.
George Zimmerman is now in custody, but has always maintained his innocence. The 28-year-old claims he acted in self-defense when he shot and killed the unarmed black teenager, but his newly appointed lawyer says he's concerned about his client getting a fair trial.
There's a lot of information, and of course there's a lot of groundswell of emotions on all sides of the issue. The statute and whether or not it's appropriate, Trayvon Martin's untimely death, Mr. Zimmerman. So there's a lot of issues and there's a lot of emotions, and we need to calm this down. It needs to be tried in a courtroom, which is the only place it's supposed to be tried.
Trayvon Martin's death has sparked protests across North America, with many claiming the case has highlighted racism throughout the US justice system. It's thought that George Zimmerman will plead not guilty to the charges. There is now a long and arduous legal road ahead. It may be some time before George Zimmerman actually appears before a jury, but for Trayvon Martin's parents, they're now closer to the justice they fought so long and hard for. Andy Gallagher, Al Jazeera, Sanford, Florida.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Howard Dean on the attack. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Just call me Miss Cleo, psychic to the stars. Just minutes after I told you last night that the Democratic Party's strategy to re-elect President Obama will be to attack Mitt Romney and the Republican Party. Presto! A few minutes later, Howard Dean shows up on MSNBC and says this.
The Republican Party is gay bashing, Muslim bashing, Latino bashing, immigrant bashing, women bashing every day. And so their young people are just not going to vote for Romney because they're not going to, they think insurance should actually pay for birth control. They don't, their friends are gay, Muslim, Latino, and so forth and so on. They're sick of this stuff.
Now, I want to thank Governor Dean for making me an oracle. It was nice of him to do it. So what we have here is the Democrats trying to put together a coalition of the aggrieved. Millions of Americans who feel they're not getting what they deserve. And of course, President Obama is here to help them. Now, that analysis is not a slap at the president. Unlike some of you, I don't think he's a bad guy. But I do think he's misguided philosophically, and because of that, is doing damage to the country's economic infrastructure. But I don't see him as Dr. Evil. In fact, I have never, ever seen Mr. Obama with a cat.
As you know, every diabolical scheme that I've hatched has been thwarted by Austin Powers.
Now, seriously, here's how the campaign is going to unfold. The coalition of the aggrieved will be stoked up by guys like Howard Dean and a variety of other liberal bomb throwers. They will put forth that America is not a fair country and that the only person who can make it fair is President Obama. The bomb throwers will then slime Mitt Romney in every way possible. Now, on the other side, conservatives and Republicans will make a mistake if they sink into that swamp. At this point, everybody knows President Obama. You don't have to demonize the man. You either like him or you don't. But everybody does not know how much danger there is in uncontrolled federal spending. That is what Mitt Romney and the Republicans have to make crystal clear. How a $16 trillion debt that continues to rise will affect every American. If they can get that point across, everybody will be aggrieved, not just a few selected minorities. So there you have it, right from the mouth of an oracle. And that's the memo. Now to the top.
Tell me your reaction, first of all, to the charges this afternoon.
Well, again, I'm a bit surprised that she was charging with second degree, but she knows the evidence. I don't yet, so it's sort of tough for me to comment on what I haven't seen yet. We'll just have to wait until the process works itself through.
When you say you're surprised by that charge, why?
Well, because, again, she knows the evidence, but that type of crime sort of suggests that he did something truly unlawful, and I think the evidence so far suggested that there was at least question and controversy over what happened, but quite honestly, we really do need to wait to see what the evidence tells us.
Have you had much time to really look over the case at this point, or are you really that new to it at this juncture?
No, sir. I truly am that new to it. I've seen only what has been shown in the media. I have had no other contact with the case, so it's really difficult for me to speak at all authoritatively about the evidence, and wouldn't be proper anyway.
I assume you've had a chat with Mr. Zimmerman without getting into any of the attorney-client privilege. Can you give us a sense of his mood?
Well, I think he's troubled by the fact that the state decided to charge him, but we're certainly going to prepare a defense, and I think that understanding what he has in front of him, he's doing okay.
Would you say at this point that the key issue here is a question of self-defense? Because certainly that's what we've been led to believe so far.
It seems that way to me from everything that I've seen from the media. Certainly that's going to be one facet of the defense, but I just have no idea yet.
What is the next step right now, Mr. O'Mara? When do you go to court, or what is the next thing that we should be looking for?
There will be a bond motion hopefully by tomorrow, when a judge will review at least some of the facts of the case and decide how and under what conditions to release Mr. Zimmerman.
And then what would you expect after that? I mean, it has to go one way or the other, but then you prepare for the next phase, which I assume is at some point him entering a plea.
Oh, he'll enter a plea of not guilty like any criminal defendant would do at this stage of the proceedings, and then we go through a round of discovery, which is where we actually find out about the case, which gives us a lot more information than I have now.
And do you have any idea what kind of time schedule will be on for all of that? You obviously have a very steep learning curve at this point.
Absolutely, but I intend to get caught up to speed pretty quickly. The state is under an obligation to start getting into discovery no less than after the next 15 days. I anticipate the prosecutor and I will be having conversations about getting that information to me as soon as possible, and we'll work through it.
Are you concerned at all about the degree of public attention this case has had, in particular in areas like Sanford, where there have been marches in the street and rallies and people calling for justice?
Yes, any high-profile case adds a lot of extra elements to it, a lot of extra problems to it. Whether or not the case can be tried in Seminole County is one, and the fact that it gets so much focus and so much attention, people tend to overanalyze and microanalyze it so that every decision is suggested to have significance when it may not. It's just part of a lengthy process that we're just now getting started.
After weeks of tension, the Neighborhood Watch volunteer who shot 17-year-old unarmed Trayvon Martin has been arrested. 28-year-old George Zimmerman turned himself in and was taken into custody.
Today, we filed an information charging George Zimmerman with murder in the second degree.
And Special Prosecutor Angela Corey announcing the second-degree murder charges would not tell us how they came to the conclusion. If he does get convicted, he could spend the rest of his life in prison.
The way it ended with Trayvon being shot.
In an exclusive interview on the day Zimmerman had been charged with murder, Trayvon Martin's parents spoke to the Associated Press.
If I had an opportunity to talk to George Zimmerman, I would probably give him an opportunity to apologize. I would probably ask him if there was another way that he could have settled the confrontation that he had with Trayvon.
A capias has been issued for his arrest. With the filing of that information and
the shooting touched off marches, a series of furious debates over race, self-defense, and gun control. Trayvon's father wants answers.
We will continue to walk by faith. We will continue to hold hands on this journey. White, black, Hispanic, Latino. We will continue to walk. We will march and march and march until the right thing is done.
God, right now we ask you to be with the Martin family right now, God. Not only the Martin family, but the Zimmerman family.
Residents of Sanford packed this church to watch the charges on live television. There was no shortage of opinion. George Zimmerman is expected in court on Wednesday, at which point he could request bail. And as far as Zimmerman's plea of guilty or not.
Yes, as 99.9% of criminal defense attorneys criminal defendants charged with a crime. You plead not guilty presently. That keeps the process moving forward.
This case that has sent sociological tremors across America has only just begun. Robert Ray, Associated Press, Sanford, Florida.
Do you think Angela Corey has new information based on her investigation?
I do. She must, because she must have evidence of what happened during those minutes after he gets off the phone with his girlfriend and when the gunshots are fired. This is a housing development. People may have seen things. There may be security cameras. We don't know. And she has had the access to all this evidence. And I just think we need to reserve judgment about this case because we know a good deal, but we don't know all that she knows.
Law enforcement on the ground is telling us that George Zimmerman is about to arrive at the Sanford jail, and that's why we're showing you that live shot. Sonny, you also believe there's new evidence?
Oh, I completely agree. I'm surprised at the second-degree murder charge, especially because you've got to prove each and every element beyond a reasonable doubt. And as you mentioned, I mean, there's a chunk of time with conflicting evidence, and so that tells me she has some clarity in terms of that conflicting evidence. There must be something new.
Mark, we have a digital dashboard question from Facebook. Tammy asks, if you were the defense attorney, would you encourage Mr. Zimmerman to take the stand?
Oh, there's no way to answer that question. In fact, most trials, I don't even make that decision until the prosecution is rested. It's something you go in. It's the toughest decision you make as a defense lawyer, and you generally regret it the minute you do it if you put the client on, and it's just no way to answer it at this point. But I will I'll be in the echo chamber here. I agree that there's got to be more evidence than what we know publicly.
But forensic evidence alone, because we know nothing about that.
How far away the gun was.
Right.
A point about the stand your ground. If he wants to use that law, he's got to say that he feared, that he was in fear. That's going to be pretty hard to do without his testimony.
I agree.
So I think if this case goes to trial, it's very likely.
His statement.
Yeah, but that's not much. I mean,
unless they put in his statement.
Yeah, yes, sure, that you could do that, but to persuade a jury, the guy claiming I was in fear for my life is pretty, is the most effective evidence you probably have.
If you take a step back,
and the defense can't do it. The defense can't put in the statement.
Well, right, I agree.
Only the
prosecution
can admit it. So
I don't. Right.
Yeah,
you know that, Mark. And I don't see the prosecution doing it. I don't see the prosecutor putting that on. I see the prosecutor holding that statement back. Make him take the stand.
Mark Aragos,
you think they'll put it on?
Well, except I think that the prosecution may put the statement on because I think part of this, what's driving this, is if you believe the reports, the homicide detective on the scene did not believe the statement. And they may put up that statement and then start punching holes into it to show, force him into taking the stand, if you will.
And the other thing I think we need to point out is, with Stand Your Ground, they get to bring that up pre-trial. They get to have a Stand Your Ground hearing. And so we may very well hear Zimmerman's point of view. We may very well see him on the witness stand before trial. And that
the economy, and that's what women overwhelmingly say they really care about right now.
All right, so you can see that what's happened now is that with the Zimmerman case in court, we can go back to the O'Reilly clip now, and this is the appropriate thing to do, is to go back to the O'Reilly clip and listen to what he says. And now you can hear, and the whole thing has to do with context, how things are done in context.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Howard Dean on the attack. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Just call me Miss Cleo, psychic to the stars. Just minutes after I told you last night that the Democratic Party's strategy to re-elect President Obama will be to attack Mitt Romney and the Republican Party. Presto! A few minutes later, Howard Dean shows up on MSNBC and says this.
The Republican Party is gay bashing, Muslim bashing, Latino bashing, immigrant bashing, women bashing every day. And so their young people are just not going to vote for Romney because they think insurance should actually pay for birth control. They don't. Their friends are gay, Muslim, Latino, and so forth and so on. They're sick of this stuff.
Now, I want to thank Governor Dean for making me an oracle. It was nice of him to do it. So what we have here is the Democrats trying to put together a coalition of the aggrieved. Millions of Americans who feel they're not getting what they deserve. And of course, President Obama is here to help them. Now, that analysis is not a slap at the president. Unlike some of you, I don't think he's a bad guy. But I do think he's misguided philosophically, and because of that, is doing damage to the country's economic infrastructure. But I don't see him as Dr. Evil. In fact, I have never, ever seen Mr. Obama with a cat.
As you know, every diabolical scheme that I've hatched has been thwarted by Austin Powers.
Now, seriously, here's how the campaign is going to unfold. The coalition of the aggrieved will be stoked up by guys like Howard Dean and a variety of other liberal bomb throwers. They will put forth that America is not a fair country and that the only person who can make it fair is President Obama. The bomb throwers will then slime Mitt Romney in every way possible. Now, on the other side, conservatives and Republicans will make a mistake if they sink into that swamp.
All right, so that's basically what's going on, and you can see now that what's happened with the tragedy of the Trayvon Martin case. Tragedy aside, the politicians who gathered around it now has proven O'Reilly right once again. Is that now this case, the Martin Zimmerman case, which is racially, politically charged, as you heard from Al Jazeera, and along with its social issues, Obama now has he's got a cause now. He's got something. They've got something to carry them through the election. This is now the Trayvon Martin case is now an election issue, and this is how politics plays out across not only the United States, but also across the world. Politics is a dirty game, and it often overlooks and doesn't care about the people it holds up as the cause. Now, this is not to diminish the case at all, and the personal tragedy surrounding this. This is showing is that these people who believe in political causes don't actually care about the person and the people involved in the case. They care about their cause. The cause is paramount. And this is sort of, if you're an independent and you want to sort of think about things, you need to sort of think of how all the political sides line up. You got to pull the politics out of it and say, okay, how does this affect me? And in many cases, you just sort of have to let the case go. Because unless you want to politicize the case and continually use this case and this issue for your own political purposes, then the case is not important to you. It's important if you want to look at how justice works and you want to eventually put in briefs and files to sort of change how the courts work. That's one thing. But if you're not using it as a case study on how to make the justice system better, then all it is politics. So I'll leave you with this now, and I'll say once again, Kalopaska, Kalianastasi for the Greeks and the Eastern Christians who are celebrating Passover and the resurrection on Sunday. I will be back with the iNN's headline news and beyond on Monday. I'm leaving the foreign affairs section out this time because we have a ceasefire that seems to be holding in Syria. So I'll leave that for the weekend, and I'll work out some of the bugs that's still in the video system, and come back on Monday with something much better. And as I said, we'll go further into the conspiracy theories. We'll find out who is some of the targets of the conspiracy theory, and then we'll start picking at these things and seeing whether or not these conspiracy theories are actually true. And I encourage you over the weekend, as you got your time, sit down and watch Danny Organ's Surprise. We've got the 5th episode now up on here. I encourage you to sit down and take a look at this. All right, take it easy. Have a good weekend. Klianasasi Klopaska.
Free speech rules here at Democratic Earth.